Hello again, and let's talk today about APA format. For those of you that know what it is, hey, maybe you can skip this one as long as you can do it well. There's a significant portion of your mark in the final paper that is related to APA. So if you're good at it already and you know how to do it, fantastic. But wouldn't hurt to watch this video to get a refresher. Honestly, this is a bit dry material. I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible, but this will be also extremely useful material because I guarantee you will use this in the rest of your academic journey, and especially if you go on to other education. APA is pretty common. It's good to know. Good to know how to do it, even if you might be doing any kind of research in a job someday. So let's dive right in. So a few questions for you. And hey, normally we're doing this in class and we can actually talk about it, but we're recorded. So, think about it on your own time. And if you want to email me with some answers or some questions, please do. So the question number one is, how do you usually reference sources in a paper? And normally I get answers like MLA, Chicago style, APA. Great. Those are very common methods for citations. Some people say, oh, I just copy paste the URL. That's a bad answer. Please don't do that. How you use APA format? Usually it's about 50-50 in the class. I don't know what they're teaching in high school, but you should know APA. What have you heard about it? Most people are not talking about this at parties, but you've probably heard that it's very common. It's one of the more common ways to cite your works. What's difficult about it? Man, to be honest, I have trouble remembering exactly how to do how to cite a book with 3 authors that's been published in multiple volumes. I don't know. I honestly don't memorize this stuff. It's not important, right? You can go look this up, how to do it, and I'll give you exact tools and how to do this. It's quite easy once you know just what the concept is. What's easy about it? Basically, not much. Why do schools make you reference sources? Basically, this whole lecture is about that. Why do you do this? The quick answer is we want to know that you did your research, number one, and we want to have a standard system that everyone can use so I can go look at your research if I need to, right? So what's APA? It's the American Psychological Association. It's a physical organization located in Washington, D.C. It's a scientific and professional organization for basically psychotherapists. And there's like 148,000 members, right? So a lot of people involved, but it's not just therapists using this type of system for referencing. It's, most of the world. This is probably the most popular system out there. And so this is why we're covering it at Fanshawe. What is APA style? Well, it's the style recommended by that association. But it's also the style that I recommend because it's generally the most, it's not easy, but it's understandable. APA style is all about how do you insert a reference. So let's say you make a bold claim about cats. Cats are awesome. All right, where's your source? How do you know cats are awesome? Is it your opinion? No, we need to have some factual information behind that. So we're presumably going to use a reference of some kind, a YouTube video, a website, a book, audio recording. You need to cite that. And citation just means tell me in words where you found this information. And there's a specific format for how to present that information, right? So APA, look, it's been around for a long time. And so let's use it. It's bigger than you. It's not that we're forcing this on you. This is the way that people use this in the professional world, and in the academic world especially. And it's about standardization. What is standardization? It means to make something the same, to make something understandable across people, across time. What do we standardize? We standardize weights, quality, strength. Voltage, kilograms. We use, volume. So, how many cubic meters of something. I'm sure you see standardization every day. Okay, building codes in Ontario, in Canada, each jurisdiction has a building code. It says you can't build a shed this close to your house. It has to be farther away so that if there's a fire or it falls down, you're not going to damage your house. It says you can't use this type of railing that's not tall enough because a child might climb in and fall over and die, right? So we have standardization of building codes so houses don't fall down or hurt people, right? You see on the gas pumps, it'll tell you this machine has been checked by Measurement Canada that is accurately measuring the volume of a liter of gas, right? You'll see it in the grocery store on those hanging weight scales, so that you can weigh your broccoli or your grapes and see how much you're getting, right? And we have to have standard measurements. Otherwise, a kilo is not a kilo, is not a millimeter, is not a millimeter, right? And then driving laws. If everyone was using their own laws to drive, we'd have massive amount of accidents. So that's why we standardize the laws. It's done for efficiency. No one has to go looking for the right amount. Compatibility, two things can work seamlessly together. Ease, it just makes it a lot easier, and for safety, right? So we want, as we're researching, to have standardization on our sourcing, on our referencing, right? So that I know exactly what document you're looking at, how it's presented, who the author is, what the date is. We use a specific format to present that information. APA documentation really consists of two parts. There's a references page, which hopefully you've all seen in your high school, which is that page or more at the bottom of your research paper where you list all of your sources, right? There's a specific format for that. We'll get into it. And then the partner to that is the in-text citations, right? That's usually a little bit of text in parentheses, and usually it only has the author's last name, a date, and maybe some page numbers or a range of page numbers, right? That goes in the body of your essay or your research paper to point us down at the reference pages, right? They're always linked. You have to have a in-text citation if you have a reference, right? We're not putting in references in the references page that you don't use in your paper. So what are references? As I said, last page of your report or pages contains only the sources that you've used. I don't want you to pad your references list by putting in stuff that you never used. And we list those entries alphabetically by last name. So we're using the author of the article or the book's last name as our ordering system, right? So, Smith would go before Zamboni, right, in the ordering. How do you do it? You want to center the title, references, or you can call it works cited or bibliography. I don't care. It all means the same thing, basically. Center that at the top of your page. Don't bold it. Don't do any underline, nothing like that. Double space all your entries so that it's just easier to read. As I said, organize alphabetically by last name. And then what do we do here? The first line of every entry is flush left with your left margin, right? So usually your documents have a 1 inch or 1.25 inch margin, right? Your first line of your entry for each of your sources is going to be flush to that left margin. Then everything below it, if it breaks onto a second or third or fourth line, you're indenting that stuff by about 1 tab or about 7 spaces, right? This is so that we can quickly see, like, oh, this one is this references together, this one's together, this one's together. It doesn't get lost in a wall of text, right? It's called a hanging indent. Looks like this. Here we go. So we have, we're alphabetized by last name. Beautiful. And the first line is flush left with the left margin. And then the rest of it on the second and third line is indented by one tab. And it's all double spaced, which makes it look a lot easier. It's a lot easier on the eyes. So what do you do here? So you've got a book, or you've got an internet article, you've got a podcast. Each of these things are cited differently, unfortunately. There's no consistent way of doing it across the board. To cite a book with one author is different than to cite a book with multiple authors, right? Again, I haven't memorized how to do all these. You've got to go look it up. This is just one example of a way to do it for multiple authors, right? And I'll share another PowerPoint that's kind of like a checklist for this stuff, okay? It'll be on the FOL. Here's an amazing guide. This is your reference document, call it your Bible for how to cite different things, right? So it's called the OWL APA guide, and it's the online writing library at Purdue University. Let's go look at that on Google. So here it is. Okay. By the way, they've got this handy tool here. You can, if you have a website you want to cite, put in the URL, click cite. It'll create the entry for you for your references page. You can just copy paste. You can do it for a book, journal article, or an online video or film as well. This is one of many tools that will automatically create citations for it. Okay, so here, OWL on the left side here. How do you format APA? Well, you've got your basics, in-text citations for authors. Okay, here now we're getting to the meat. So if you have an author or authors, click this one. If you have an article and a periodical, it's this one. Books, other print sources, electronic sources. Okay, let's say we're using a website. Click on electronic sources. Here, they tell you exactly how to source an electronic source. So it is the last name, and that's of the author, and then the first and middle name, or the initials, it's fine. The year it was published. If you don't know, just put in the year that that you accessed it, and then the month, right? Title of the page is italicized. The site name is then, so the title of the page might be the article name. The site name might be Economist or Atlantic or whatever it is, and then the URL itself. So it looks like this. So the author's last name is Price, D for whatever, Donald, Diane. 2018 is the publication date, March 23rd. The article name is italicized, and then Medium is the site, right? And then we've got the actual URL here, so that I, as your professor or anyone else, can go find it. Okay, so you've got every type of medium you can find. It's listed here. If you can't find it, look harder, or just email me and I'll help you out. Okay, so that's a very helpful tool. And you can click that link through from the PowerPoint slide, by the way, which I posted on FOL. A very helpful tool. Another one is easybid.com. Citation Machine is another one. You can basically just punch in the name of the article or the website. It'll create the citation for you in MLA or APA. We're using APA, please. What is an in-text citation? I kind of covered this, but it's that little portion in your document. As you're typing away, you're going to be adding in text citation. Every entry from your references page at the end has a corresponding in-text citation somewhere above. But how do you show it? You do this so that you can give credit to the original author, right? You don't want the reader to think that you came up with this idea if it's not your idea. So in-text citation looks like this. It's usually in brackets, and this little bit of text alerts the reader that you're using someone else's information or ideas, right? It usually contains 3 items. You've got the author, right? Usually it's the last name we put in there. The year was published, 2018. And then the page number where it appears in that original work. That's only applicable if it's a book or a magazine article or something, right? So look, here's what it looks like. This is someone's paper about shift work, and they're writing, and then we come to this. Okay, Witkowski and Dixon, 2010, page 489. It's presumably a book, right? You'll have to look to the references page at the end to know for sure. They've got another one here, and then you've got another one, and you've got, okay, now we have a bunch of authors. See this one here, they're actually citing a few different sources, right? Because they're different years, so that's great. Now, here they've done something interesting. They didn't put all of those 3 things together, which is fine. They integrated nicely into their actual text of their article. So here it says, in fact, Humphreys, 2009 in brackets, which just tells us it's the book that Humphreys wrote from 2009, stated that blah, 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 page 23 is where you can find that particular quote, right? It's fine to do it this way, totally fine. It's a proper in-text citation. Here's another example. Some researchers believe that students have difficulty using APA style, especially when it is their first time. Okay, so what we've done is we put the actual quote, so the word for word or verbatim quote that the author used in quotation marks. That's the whole purpose of quotation marks, right? And then after that, we start a bracket, open a bracket, and we use the author's last name, then comma, the year it was published, comma, and then the page, right? Or if it's a bunch of pages, page range. You shouldn't be putting a long quote in, but if it breaks over 2 pages, yeah, you can put the page range. Or you can use something called a signal phrase. This is a signal phrase right here. According to Jones, right? You're signaling that there's a source coming up, an attribution. So according to Jones, 1998, we've put the author's name, last name, and the year in brackets. Students have difficulty using APA style, blah, blah, blah. And then we put the page at the end, right? 2 different ways to do it, same effect, both are valid, both are legitimate. I hope this makes sense that, you know, instead of doing it all in one with the 3 things, the author name, the date, the page, you can break that up and put it in a way that makes more sense and flows more smoothly, right? We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. What happens when you have a long quotation? It's not unheard of that you will use like a 100-word or 200-word quote because it's just that good, right? You kind of want to avoid it unless it's absolutely justified. But if you have to, if it's more than 4 lines long, you need to do it differently than the normal. You can't just put it in quotation marks and have it in the body of your paper. You do it a little bit differently. You do it like this. You indent 5 spaces from the left margin. Remember indenting from the reference page. You do not indent from the right side. You don't put quotation marks around this quote. Instead, you end the punctuation before the parentheses. Yes, exactly. And you double space this quote, right? Here's how it works. Here's how it looks. So this paper is already double spaced, but if it wasn't, you would want to double space the quotation, right? Here's the quotation. You've got this, right? These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines plus the in-text citations at the bottom. You've indented from the left, and this just tells us, hey, it's a quote. And you've introduced the quote by saying it's Kanzi and Alia, and you've integrated it nicely. Okay, it's a long quote, but apparently they thought it was worth doing. And then you have the standard in-text citation at the end, right? Then you go back to your normal indentation. Now, I've said this already, but basically, if you're using a book or using a magazine article or an internet site, they all have different ways of formatting these in APA format, right? So nobody remembers how to do them always. Go to your reference doc, which is the OWL thing I shared, or there's a slide deck that I've attached to this lecture. Those are all ways you can remember how to do this yourself, right? Please look it up if you can't think of it. All right, let's talk about how to integrate these quotes into your paper in a seamless way. We don't want to just drop these on people, right? So a quotation is generally using exact words, right? Which is what goes in those quotation marks. And if it's coming from another person, right? AKA it's not your own words. You need to put it in quotation marks, and then you need to provide the in-text citation right after, not like later in the page, right after those quotation marks. You put them in brackets. Please avoid the quote quilts, which means just dumping quotes in there, making a patchwork of quotes in your paper. You want your paper to be maybe about 10% of that is quotes, right? The rest of it should be your own wording, your own thoughts. If you have more than 10%, you might be relying too much on quotes, and it suggests you're a little bit lazy. Don't use sources as a decoration. For example, don't insert quotations that don't really make sense for your paper, or that you don't actually, or don't include references you don't actually put in there. Only use sources that are adding something to your argument. All right, a little bit of technical stuff that I think is interesting that I learned over the years. If you need to change the wording of a quote, so you want to change, it's not quite perfect for your purposes, you need to change a bit of the wording. You can put your own words in these square brackets, right, in red here. Or if the original has editing errors in it, like a spelling mistake, use the word SIC, which stands for set in context. You're setting this quote in the actual context from where you found it, right? Which just means you're not changing anything in the quote, you're not fixing the typo, but you want to make sure the reader knows you're not an idiot that didn't proofread. So you say SIC. set in context, right? Just to show that there is a spelling mistake or a logical mistake or something like that, a factual mistake. And then if you have a long quote, but you don't want the middle part, or you want to cut out a few words, as long as you don't change the what is intended as a meaning, it's fine. You can just use in brackets these ellipses, which is 3 dots, dot, dot, dot. The reader will know that, okay, he or she has cut out something from this quote that is irrelevant, presumably, right? Just for brevity's sake. Examples. Here we go with the square brackets. According to Brad Pitt, the paparazzi are responsible for the death of Princess Diana, and then we've put the page number, right? So, okay, what could it have been before? It might have just been a little bit too wordy, right? It could have been, according to Brad Pitt, these jerks in their fast cars with their flashy cameras. We want to cut that out, that editorializing, right? That extra colorful language. You just say the paparazzi. You know, it's more precise, and that's our own wording, right? The paparazzi. Or here we go. Jones, 2007, believes that cats, obviously cats is spelled wrong, but we want to let the reader know that we know it's spelled wrong. So we put set in context, right? Beside the spelling mistake, are loyal. And that's an actual quote. The guy, you know, wrote it with a typo. So we, or the woman, we want to accurately portray it and not fix the typo in the original. We just put SIC. Or here, another example. Jones writes that cats sleep, period, dot, 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 most of the day, right? That's called an ellipsis. It tells us, hey, there's more stuff that was in the original quote, but we cut it because it wasn't relevant. Totally fine. Now, how do you integrate these quotes into your paper seamlessly? If you do it awkwardly, it looks kind of like this cake. This is the type of thing I would make because I'm sloppy and lazy in the kitchen. But you kind of want it to look professional. Here's a better, more seamless integration. You get the picture? So how do you blend your quotes into your own writing? Now, it's a bit of an art. It's not easy to do. It comes with practice. But if you can do it well, it'll read very smoothly. There won't be any bumpy sections in your paper. The reader will appreciate that. And we can do this by using two things, transitions and signal phrases. Here's what not to do. Don't take a quote, full quote, and just dump it beside your own sentence, right? They have to mesh somehow. They have to kind of lead into each other. It's not going to explain it unless you explain it. You can't just juxtapose two things beside each other and say, oh, the reader will figure it out. You want to help them understand it and what is your position. Don't assume that the reader will know. Avoid this. Avoid dropping a quote on the reader, just like an anvil, right? You don't want the quote to hit them on the head. You want it to make sense and flow a little bit. Here's some bad integration. Ray was always a nice guy. I love you, Annie. Okay, that those two things don't really go together, right? We want to know, like, why is it so choppy at this point? Those two things don't go together very seamlessly. So let's avoid that, right? Here's a better way to do it. Ray was always kind to his family and frequently said, I love you, Annie. Same quote, but now we've kind of integrated, we've meshed it a little bit better, right? To express affection for his wife. Good. People are named. We know what we're talking about. The quote fits directly in the text. It supports the argument we're making, which is Ray was always kind. And the idea is fully written out and developed. It's seamless from end to end, right? From start to finish. Don't be afraid to use the author's name as a good blending tool. For example, we've seen this already. According to Jones, cats are rarely seen on our streets anymore. Yeah, you've used the author's name and said according to sort of integrate us into the quote. Here's another one. Recent studies suggest that cats are rarely seen on our streets anymore. And then we put the citation. That's fine too. Yeah, that's a good way to transition into the quote. Perfect. Whereas if we were doing it badly, cats have become scarce, period. Cats are rarely seen on our streets anymore. No, I mean, yes, those two things do go together, but they're not working well together. See what I mean? Hopefully. Here's an interesting one, which a lot of people don't do. In-text citations have to make grammatical sense. If you're going to put two things together, it has to flow as a proper English sentence. So here's a bad one. When writing a research essay, tries to gather enough evidence to prove a thesis. No, that's not a proper sentence. There's something missing there, right? At this stage between essay and tries. But if we fix it, a research essay tries to gather enough evidence to prove a thesis, right? Perfect. You've got the original building material here, which is the quote, but you've taken it now and switched it around a little bit and put your own wording in here, which now makes the whole thing make sense. Get it? Great. Okay, so that's kind of, is that it already? Wow, that time flew by, man. I had so much fun. So you get it, hopefully. If it doesn't make sense, please email me. We're going to do an APA assignment so that you get kickstarted on your research. Hopefully this is not being left till the last minute, and you got your research paper already on the go because, hey, you've got your deadline, you've got the assignment. It's worth a lot of marks. So please go ahead and take a look at your research report if you haven't already, and start applying some of this APA stuff to your assignment. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll pick it up in one more video after this.